No more dogfights in sci-fi.
So this was actually addressed by someone who has something to do with Star Wars. I can't remember who. Watch the stitched video for a bit of context. Basically, this guy was saying that, like, the battles in Star Wars probably don't actually happen the way that they happen on screen. As with, like, more serious science fiction, this guy was saying that the space battles in Star Wars should actually probably be taking, place, hundreds of kilometers away from each other. And the idea that you would, like, get in a turret and aim at a person is ridiculous. And so all of that stuff is pretty much, like, just for the viewer, just for artistic interpretation, which is really saying that these space battles are not diegetic. How to explain diegetic? If you're watching a film and someone takes a record and puts it in a record player and then turns it on and there's music, then that music is diegetic. It is happening inside the canon of the universe. If, in that film, a montage starts and a pop song starts playing, that music doesn't actually exist in that, well, probably doesn't, and that is non-diegetic music. That does not actually exist in the universe. So what this guy was saying about Star Wars is that these space battles are only semi-diegetic. They're artistic interpretations of these battles that would actually happen in completely different ways, just to make things interesting for the screen. There's an interesting quote from Elijah Wood in, like, the special whatevers for Return of the King. There's a part where Sam is rescuing Frodo after he's been taken by the orcs. And Elijah is saying, it's like, hey, I asked the lighting director, why can we see anything? Because we're in, like, a really tight space. Surely it'd be completely dark in here. Elijah was just like, where is this light coming from? The lighting director apparently said, the same place as the music. And, like, a lighting director on a Lord of the Rings film definitely studied film. Like, he's referring to its non-diegetic music. In fact, non-diegetic lighting in this case. Which is very nice of them to, like, let us actually see what's going on. So yeah, probably, like, all of these, like, sci-fi dogfights and stuff are probably only semi-diegetic. Which is weird, right? Because, like, from a writing perspective, you could just come up with a justification as to why these dogfight sort of battles are happening. You could just have, like, a single paragraph talking about how, in this space age, actually, armor and shields have massively outpaced the amount of damage that weapons can do. Now, these days, we're more familiar with weaponry massively outpacing armor. After firearms were invented, that's just how it's been. But that hasn't necessarily always been the case. And, like, all you have to do is say things like, oh, space-age composite armor materials and force fields. And I guarantee the readers will be like, alright, sure. And you can just say, with, like, the developments in military-grade armor, the only kinds of weaponry that actually work against, like, things like capital ships are massive energy weapons that, due to how force fields work or something, dissipate almost entirely after about, I don't know, 30 feet. And now, all of a sudden, you've got that kind of Star Wars sort of, like, capital ships right next to each other stuff. Like, you could probably do all of that in, like, one paragraph. The thing is, no one really does. And I don't really care. Obviously, the fellow that I'm stitching does. I think the majority of people, if there's, like, a big sci-fi and things have to get within, like, 20 feet of each other to blast each other, I think the majority of us are just gonna go, sure. So let's say this, I would prefer, if you as a writer are doing a sci-fi thing with, like, space battles and so on, I'd prefer, like, just a paragraph explaining that, we need to get this close to shoot each other. I would appreciate that. However, frankly, if you can't think of, like, a good way to do it, or, like, a good character to introduce to do that, I honestly don't mind if you can't be fucked.